I'm here with Tim, and today we're going to be talking about email warmup. Is it safe, and does it even work? So, Tim, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background in email, and then after that, tell us what you think about the whole topic?
Certainly, be happy to. My name is Tim Starr. I've been working in deliverability since before it was called that. I started back in 2003. I have worked at various email service providers. The longest term ones were Maropost and what was then called Responsys, which then went public and then got taken private and is now part of Oracle. So I was 8 years at Maropost and 4.5 years at Responsys. And I was also at SendGrid and Marketo, among other places. So I've had a lot of experience with deliverability, warm-ups, and consulting, blacklist remediation and relations, ISP blocking remediation relations, etc.
Sure. And I suppose before we get into the topic of whether email warmup works and if it's safe, I think it might be helpful to everyone just to define what email warmup is. Obviously, we're talking about softwares out there in the typically cold email space that send emails within their network of emails to each other, trying to sort of replicate real email sending with the claims that's going to improve the deliverability.
Yeah, right, exactly. And that's not the form of warm-up that I've typically done. I won't describe that because that's not our topic here, but I've always been skeptical of this type of email warm-up strategy where you basically have, a few email accounts that you control sending email to each other. Now, when I say a few, my understanding is it could be, a few hundred. To me, that's a few because I've had clients that send millions of emails a day. One client I can think of sent 15 million emails a day. So a few hundred emails is a drop in the bucket compared to that. And the reason I bring that up is to give a sense of the type of scale that big mailbox providers are used to operating at and analyzing things out. So a very relatively small amount of activity is just not going to move the needle with their reputation algorithms. So one of the reasons I've always been skeptical of this, also when I've talked to mailbox providers or people that work there, they've said that it's very easy for them to tell the difference between these types of email warm-up accounts and normal email accounts, because normal email accounts send and receive email to a lot of other different accounts. And they do so with accounts, at a lot of different sources or mailbox providers. And there's just a really big difference between that and, a few hundred email addresses that are all sending and receiving email to and from each other. Mm-hmm. So to them, it's really easy to identify those and basically wall them off in their algorithms and say, we don't care what those accounts do. We're not going to pay any attention to it.
Okay, that makes sense. And do you think if there are warm-up services that have, for example, thousands of email accounts in their network, that would make any difference? Or do you still think that it's still relatively easy for email service providers such as Gmail, Outlook to identify sort of suspicious activity?
Yeah, I would say it's still very easy. I mean, you got to remember they're designing their systems to respond as quickly as possible to spammer attacks that can be very big and very fast. Spammers can buy an email list, they can upload it, and they can blast out to it, and that email list can be in the millions. So that's what they're primarily designed to try to identify and stop. And one thing you got to realize here is that last I saw, there was a study that said that the vast majority of emails sent in the world, like 95% of it, is so spammy that it never even reaches anyone's spam folder. It gets blocked before it even gets that far. So, that's the kind of thing that they're trying to address and deal with. And so trying to game that system. And I think, I've made the same point you do in your article, which is that when you're looking at big mailbox providers like Gmail, they're one of the largest corporations in the world. They've got tons of money they can spend to invest in capital equipment and hire the smartest people in the world. And what they're telling those people to do is to design a system to make it so that every email that reaches one of their users' inboxes is one that that particular user actually wants in their inbox. And so thinking that, setting up a small pool of email addresses, even a few thousand, that's going to be able to fool them for any length of time, I think is just a non-starter, really. And another data point I would reference in that is that it's common for inbox monitoring tools to use seed lists to monitor inbox placement, and those seed lists may have, over 1,000 email addresses on those seed lists. And even then, a typical email marketer's audience is going to be, again, in the millions. So, even if you have 1,000 seed email addresses, that's not going to be terribly representative of the millions of actual users that are in your real audience.
Okay. So, if we're saying that email warm up isn't necessarily the best idea, can you give maybe 2 or 3 quick examples of practical things that people can do to make sure that their emails are delivered to the primary inbox and not spam? And I'm obviously referring to the cold email space, salespeople sending outbound emails. For example, SPF, DKIM, DMARC. Do you have any other things that you would recommend people do?
Yeah, I would. So for one thing, spam is defined as unsolicited bulk email. So if we're talking about cold email here, the less bulky it is, meaning, cookie cutter, one size fits all, everyone gets the exact same email. The less that is the case, the better off you're going to be. The more personalized it is, the more unique it is. Beyond that, I would say get your authentication set up right. That doesn't necessarily mean that you will get inboxed, but the more you're lacking in authentication, or if the authentication is configured incorrectly, for instance, if it doesn't meet DMARC specifications, that's going to hurt you.
All right. Well, thanks for that advice. I think that concludes our conversation. I hope everyone watching enjoyed this talk. I also wrote an article about this, so check that out as well. And thanks for watching.